In case you're worried, that is not a real cover yet. Jamil, how's Mr. Murdoch travelling in Asia? Is he still ruling the skies?
He's not really in China, which is where I am, and
he sacrificed quite a lot to get into China.
He sacrificed a lot. He got married for his access to China, and but I think. I mean, there was a recent book that came out by one of his former employees, which sort of laid out the pitfalls that he'd managed to throw himself into while he was trying to get into China. And it looks like he's been, mostly his star network is not very widely available in China. And he's, Phoenix Television is very popular, which he has a very troubled relationship with, I think. And so I think, in China at least, he hasn't done that well. But he owns the Wall Street Journal now, which is of great interest to us at the Financial Times. And that's kind of it's a two-edged sword. And on the one hand, he's got a whole lot of money he's going to throw at the journal, which could, and they have been adding staff, and they've definitely increased their presence. So, for example, in Beijing, I think the journal, I don't know exact numbers, but they've got probably 3 times as many reporters as we have on the ground, the FT, and you can't tell from the coverage. But I think, the flip side of that is that other media organisations also have to, with the threat from Rupert Murdoch, he is, I mean, we were talking about this earlier, he is almost saving newspapers, because the FT, for example, probably has to match him to a certain extent. They have to up their game if they want to remain competitive. So it's, he's raising the stakes, and he's probably helping us in a small way. On
the other hand, Anna, we've seen quite big media companies like Tony O'Reilly's empire starting to unravel. ACP, as we know in that report, is heavily indebted. Do you think there's a danger that Western countries that have long had correspondents in other parts of the world are going to have to pull back? Does that worry you?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, at the FT, we're not immune from that, obviously. The FT's, really well known for its foreign coverage, and we have more than 50 bureaus, but still, this is going to hurt us as well, and they will, cause the FT to think about which bureaus they really need. But it's been really interesting in Korea over the last few years to watch on the ground the way that this global shift is taking place. So during my time there, like the Los Angeles Times newspaper shut its bureau, even though they have 1 million Koreans in Los Angeles. Time magazine shut its bureau.
I think the LA Times doesn't have much of an office in LA anymore, actually.
Yeah, that's true, that's true. Yeah, so it's causing everybody, I think, around the world to, they're feeling the pinch.
So who are the powers in the Indian media industry? Because I get the impression that's a very crowded, very competitive and very free industry.
Yes, and the good news is that I think the print industry is still thriving and doing well. The shift that we see elsewhere in the world, that I think hasn't yet happened. On the other hand, the electronic media is booming. Television, we have so many channels now. And if you just look back, I think in 1990, we had just one news channel, the government news channel, and we had to just watch those programs. And today we have about 300 channels. So
what's been the impact of that? Is this a better informed, wiser population, or is there just more television?
There's just more television at one level. Some of the news channels are 24-hour news channels. So, yes, people who should be reading newspapers are just watching television. But it is still the government news channel, that is Doordarshan, which has the greatest reach. And that reaches out to rural India. So the impact in rural India is really still the government, the way it presents the news.
Are any of the Indian media companies becoming a force elsewhere in the region? Are they expanding?
Yes, channels like NDTV is, I think it's viewed in the Middle East as well as in Southeast Asia. I think the viewers would mainly be Indians staying there. But it is popular. Say, Indian soaps are hugely popular in South Asia, especially in Pakistan, and Afghanistan.
Right.
Indian media has been huge there.
Yeah. How do you guys find that? I mean, do you, as Western media correspondents, are you seeing more competition? Has the atmosphere become more competitive as regional media becomes more confident? Is there something happening there?
From my experience in South Korea, we're in quite a different boat from the domestic media and regional media, I think. And in fact, it's quite the opposite from my experience in South Korea, which is kind of on the periphery of global news coverage, I guess, and that competition's been drifting away. So it's been quite good to be there and not to have so much competition on the news front.
In China, the media is totally controlled by the government. All channels, all papers have to be approved, and journalists sometimes arrested. It's a totally, and I despair watching Chinese television. I barely watch it now because I find it just so boring.
Can that hold? Can that persist? That degree of control over message by the government?
As long as there's a Communist Party, yes. It will. The internet has done amazing things as far as the media, and also the commercialisation of certain parts of the media. But the government has just been. I mean, you've probably heard of the Great Firewall of China. They are at least sort of keeping up with with the help of large Western companies. They're keeping up with technological advancement, and they're able to, to make sure that they maintain their grip on the internet, but also, I mean, even more so on traditional media.
Before we finish, we should get in the Fonterra issue. All we heard here was Fonterra. How did that story manifest in China? How did the government manage the Sanlu scandal?
They managed it like they manage most big scandals, which is they suppressed it for a long, long time. Probably, I mean, it's unclear, but probably since March. They suppressed it until September, at least at the local level, and maybe even higher. And local reporters who were onto the story, and at least as early as May, were told to desist. And there was a general order that was sent out pre-Olympics, telling all the media, giving the list of things. This is regular. There are regular circulars that go around from the propaganda authorities that go around to all media that tell you what you should report more on, what you should report less on, what you're not absolutely banned from reporting on. And one of them was food scandals. You're absolutely not allowed during the Olympics to report on.
So how badly, just briefly, how badly was Brand New Zealand and Fonterra hurt by what happened?
I think quite badly. And I think that I personally, I have a 7-month-old daughter, and she drinks baby formula. Luckily, I bring it from New Zealand whenever I can, and she wasn't drinking Sanlu or any other kind of Chinese formula. But as a parent of a young child, I think it's disgraceful that Fonterra sat on this information for 6 weeks, and I think Andrew Ferrier, or someone, probably Andrew Ferrier, should go because of this.
Now, we're almost out of time, but Sudha, I wonder whether you could come up with the story that we should watch in New Zealand from your turf. What do you think is going to be the big story in the next 6 months that we should be paying attention to?
Pakistan, whether this government is going to survive, whether there's going to be support for the anti-Taliban operations. I think that's the big story.
And Anna?
I think the presidential elections in Iran next year, from my patch there, is the thing to watch, how Ahmadinejad fares, whether there's a popular movement towards a more reformist president again like Khatami.
And we should no doubt follow it in the Financial Times.
Of course.
Indeed. ft.com. And that is all we have time for this week. Thank you to our panellists, Jamil Andolini, Anna Fifield and Dr. Sudha Ramachandran. And thank you for watching. Don't forget our Media7 election special, 7:10 election night on this channel, and our campaign post-mortem at the usual time next week. For now, goodbye.